Now, do you want to introduce the webinar?
Sure, I can do that. So welcome everyone. If you don't know us, I'm Mel, this is Steve. We work at Stratos and Steve is a regional director at Microsoft MVP. And he's going to talk to you today about Cowork and Copilot and how it all ties together. And he definitely didn't make his presentation in AI.
Thanks, Mel. So if people have got questions, if you just pop your questions into the chat today, and then Mel's going to moderate the questions because when I'm presenting, I won't be able to see the screen. So yeah, and Mel will pause me at various points to try and answer any questions. If the questions are more complicated, we might hold them to the end because I've got quite a bit of stuff to go through today. So I'll just start by I've changed my mind about how I'm going to present this. I'm just going to start by just going through a few slides just to sort of set the scene and talk about some of the features of Copilot and Cowork. So the theme really is about moving ourselves from assisting us with work, which is what the existing sort of AI tools that we're pretty familiar with do. We can ask it a question, it can draft a document, it can summarize content, etc. But it's interactive with us as we're doing it. So we can't sort of move on to the next thing. And then along came Cowork. So Cowork first came out, the concept came out in February this year. And it's really now just got to the point where it's become generally available in the Microsoft tenant on the 1st of July. So it has been available in preview, but there's a couple of important things to note about that, which we'll talk about today. But the main difference is that Cowork is like having an assistant. You give Cowork a task, and that task can be multi-stage, and it will figure out how to do that task for you, and then come back with questions and so on. And so in today's session, I'm going to do a bit of a demo of some things, but I'm also going to talk about when you use one over the other. And when I get to the section around the costs and how it's billed, you'll understand why it's pretty important to understand which one you use and when. So, underpinning the Microsoft 365 Copilot and Cowork is a technology called WorkIQ. So what WorkIQ does is it basically allows the AI to connect to the things that you work with, the people and the context that you have around your work. And that's automatic. So it's kind of built in the background, and it creates the context that AI needs to answer the questions in a way that's contextual to the way that you're working. It's also understands the security of the organization, things like sensitivity labels and permissions and so on. So it acts like you, but sort of in an autonomous type of way. So it's proper agentic technology. What Microsoft 365 Copilot does, so this is the one which we've had now for nearly 3 years, is it's really now a tool that's embedded in your applications like Word and Excel and PowerPoint, Outlook and Teams. It's been around while it's connected to the graph, so it understands your email. You can use it to find things in meetings, various things like that. You can summarize. And then what happened this year is that Microsoft added the agentic capability. So this is the ability to do multiple steps actions inside a document. So this PowerPoint slide deck that we're looking at now was entirely created using AI. I did not quite. I did 3 or 4 small things inside the PowerPoint document itself, but the drafting and the creation and the layouts were all done using AI. I didn't actually have to manipulate, even putting in where our company logo is down the bottom, consistently on pages. All of that was done by AI, and that's this agentic capability or the multi-step capability. And these models run on top of ChatGPT, or we'll call OpenAI's GPT models, or the Claude models from Anthropic. And it's got built-in enterprise protection, so everything we're doing here is contextual to you, and it only has the same permissions that you have in order to act. What Cowork does is Cowork takes us a little to the next step. So basically what it's allowing us to do is set up jobs or ask AI to do tasks that run over longer periods of time. They can require multiple steps. They can require some sorts of of thinking about like which tool do I use, for example, selecting the tools to help answer the question, where am I getting information from? And so by combining that understanding of the tools that we have in Microsoft 365 and using the Work IQ to understand the information that you have access to and your context, it's able to generate a kind of a better quality result and a more autonomously. Now, the key thing to understand here is that these tools are built on Anthropic's Claude models. They're not built on the OpenAI models that have been used in Copilot in the past. And so Cowork and Copilot will give you different results because they're using a different underlying model. So Cowork, I'm going to do a wee demo, but Cowork is basically about taking action on your behalf, given some instructions. So what I'll do, rather than try and explain it, I'm going to show it. So I'll just stop sharing and jump into my other screen. And we're going to start here with Copilot. So if I'm in Copilot normally, I will have a page like this. You'll see when you go into this, into Copilot, you'll get something that looks like this. And on the side, you can ask it some questions. So here's one I asked it yesterday. I said, can I give me some flights times to Napier? So I asked it some questions and said, when I want to fly to Napier on the 18th and 19th of August. And it came back with costs. And I said, give me the start and end times. Or can you create a table with the departure and arrival times and costs? And it gave me the date, but not the time that the flight's leaving. So that's kind of not all that useful. The costs were good. So then I had to ask it another question. I said, can you add the time? And so then it came in here and said, and added the date. And then it's got the earliest departure times listed down here for the flights on this. So I can get an idea of when the flights are. But you'll see, in order to get the answer, I had to ask multiple questions on the way through. Now, when I'm asking all of these questions on the way through there, it's requiring my attention. And so while AI is quite good at going out and finding the stuff on the internet, it's not really saving me as much time as it perhaps could if I was able to send it off to do the job by itself autonomously. So once you've enabled Cowork in your tenant, I'm going to come back and talk about the admin side of this shortly too, but I wanted to start the demo first rather because it does take a little while to run. Once Cowork is enabled, you get this option at the top here for Cowork. You click on to Cowork. If you haven't got it there, then you need your administrator to enable some things, and then you'd add the Cowork agent into your site. And then they'll probably get you to sign your name in blood because there is a cost to what I'm about to do. Now, when I go into Cowork, I've got these pre-built prompts, and if I just click on one, I just want to zoom my screen a wee bit here, you'll see it has pre-built quite a big prompt, which is quite a lot longer than a lot of the prompts that you would see in the pre-built ones that you get in Copilot normally, or in ChatGPT or other tools. So you'll see it's giving a whole lot of things, instructions in here about it. And these are the instructions that maybe you'd give to your assistant or the grad or someone else in your team to do this on your behalf. And you'll see that it's looking for the total numbers of emails. It's looking for my manager or the management chain in the email list. It's looking for anything that looks like it might be urgent. It's getting rid of anything that might be spam. If it's spam, let's delete the email. And so you can see by that it can actually act on your behalf. So these are all the instructions that we give it. And when we do that, when we run that, it's going to send that off and it's going to do it in the background that I can carry on with something else. So it doesn't need me to be involved. So I'm going to do an example. I'm just going to delete this one out here. And we have, at Stratos, we have lots of projects going on all the time. And we have a regular task, which is to produce a project report. We also have tasks which are around things like our management reporting, where we have to produce a report for our managers meeting and so on. And so these types of tasks are all kind of time consuming. They take up little bits of your day. So let me show you what's possible. I'm going to just jump into my OneDrive for a minute. And in my OneDrive, I've got a little folder in here with some demo content in it, but I'll show you two things. One is I've got this project report template, and the project report template you'll see has an executive summary. It's got these placeholder elements in the document, but it doesn't have any detail in here about all these different things. And then I've also got in here a spreadsheet, and the spreadsheet contains a whole lot of stuff about the project tasks and various things. So it's a whole lot of stuff sitting in here related to that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Cowork, because Mel's a hard taskmaster. She's given me the job of doing a project report that I need to urgently get done this afternoon. But I've got no time because I'm spending my time doing a webinar. So I'm going to say, can you please create a project report using this template? And I'm just going to use the / key. That gives me the ability to pick my recent files and get the data for the report from this spreadsheet. And again, I'm just going to hit the / key. I'm just going to use my project data spreadsheet. And I'm going to hit, and actually maybe I want to create an email and create an email. Sorry, my screen is just gone a wee bit funny there. Let's create an email. Whoops. So now I hit enter before it started. So create an email to send with the report to the CEO. Keep the tone happy. So I'm just going to queue that up. So now the first thing you'll see there is I was able to queue another command to happen after the first one. So what it's doing is it's allowing me to queue up the tasks, and now I'm going to shoot off and do another job. And while I'm doing that, what you'll see it's doing is it's thinking at the moment, but on the right-hand side over here, we get a list of the steps that it's undertaking, and you'll start seeing it build out the process. So let's wait for that to do a couple of things so you can sort of see it in action. And while we're doing that, I'll show you a couple of other things that you can see in the Cowork UI. So we can create regular tasks, and you'll see the tasks that we can create here are things that you might repeat. So if I do this task frequently, I might just store this in my tasks so that I can repeatedly do it, and I can schedule it and say, use this. Maybe I do this at month end, and after month end, I've got the report data sitting somewhere and I know where to find it. I could ask Cowork to go and find that and then do the report for me. Now you'll see what it's doing here is it's starting to give me a bit of a breakdown of all of the tasks it's doing, and it's just pulling it all together. And what it's going to do is it's going to figure out, so it's reading the report at the moment, it's going to figure out what tools do I need to use to answer this question. While this is running away in the background, it might have a question where it needs a bit of clarification. So what it'll do is it'll notify you if it does, but you can actually leave it to go off and do its own thing. So just to prove that, what I'm going to do is at the same time, I'm going to jump back over into Copilot chat over here, and I'm just going to ask it a question over here. What day is the best day to go skiing? I've just done the month end and need a break. So I'm just going to ask it to do something there. Now, while I'm doing that in Copilot itself, back over in Cowork, you'll see this one here has got a little indicator on it saying it's working on it, and I can click on there. So I can actually send off multiple tasks. I'm not even restricted to doing one Cowork task at a time. I can run multiple Cowork sessions, which is fantastic if you're Anthropic, and I'll show you why that is. We'll let that run away in the background. This is going to take a few minutes to run, so we'll go back to the slides, and we'll start. Whoops, wrong slide deck. Sorry. Should be better than that by now. So if we go back to our slides here. So while it's doing that in the background, we'll jump through a few more slides. So this slide here is really about the differences between the two products. So the first one, the Copilot, where I was asking it about the flights, it's interactive, one command at a time. Copilot Cowork is multi-step, and I'm delegating tasks to it. So it's very much like a person that you might be sitting next to coaching in the first one, where you've taking them step by step through the task versus giving someone else a job to do, which is more the co-work way of doing it. And the big difference really is the models that it uses underneath, and also the consumption versus the way the licensing works. So for Copilot, our Microsoft 365 Copilot, we have to buy a Copilot license. Here's the rough indications of the retail prices for Copilot in New Zealand. So $48 a month for Copilot. That lets me do all of the interactive stuff. It's integrated into the applications and so on. There's different SKUs for it based on what your licensing preference is. Whereas the Cowork option requires the Copilot license plus consumption. Now, the key thing to understand here is that consumption is based on credits. A credit is worth about 1.6 New Zealand cents with the current exchange rate. So think about it, 1 US cent per credit. And if you look down the bottom, there's a little graph. The light tasks will cost between 100 to 300 credits to run, so between $1 to $3 US. A medium one would cost somewhere between 4 to 7, and a heavy task, when I'm getting into lots of stuff, will cost you probably more than $7 US. So multiply that by 1.6 or 1.7 to get the exchange rate currently for the US, and you'll get an idea of the cost. So the thing that you need to think about here is, like, when do I use Copilot and when do I use Cowork? So because the Cowork cost is additional, it's a good idea to think about, am I justifying this cost or recovering this cost in some kind of way, either through efficiency, or is it something that I'm on charging, or whatever is in my role? So here's a couple of some examples of the different types of use cases that you might use, which will help sort of frame up when do we use one over the other. So Copilot Cowork is very good at drafting documents and so on, but it's expensive. So I would suggest that those types of tasks that are regular AI assisted things, that we do those in Copilot. So drafting an email, summarizing meetings, analyzing or creating formulas in Excel, creating a draft of a deck from a document, like the one we're looking at right now, meeting notes, anything we do in Microsoft Word where we're drafting or refining a document. All of those things are great, are best done in Copilot. In Cowork, we would do things where we've got a task that's perhaps a little bit more complicated. So I've got a pipeline of tasks in a spreadsheet, and I want to take those and work out which ones do I follow up, and have it draft the emails for me to follow up, to send out to the people that I need to follow up with, or send Teams messages or similar. Creating files across product versions. So I did an experiment with Cowork where I took a 148-page document with 42,000 words, and I got it to produce a new modernized version of that document. It took Cowork less than 2 hours to do it, and it was before Microsoft started charging for it, which is so I would imagine that it would have been a very expensive exercise compared to if I had to pay for that activity. But the thing is, it's capable of working with very big documents and complex things. Putting the polish on the end of your slide decks, I probably still tend to mostly do this in Copilot because I like to be a bit more interactive, but Cowork can do that for you. You can give it to it and say, update the branding and apply my template to this to make it consistent, set the fonts and so on, which might be something you want to do after a collaborative creation. And then the next one that we would have is things like preparing a meeting. So one thing Cowork can do is it can look at your calendar, it can find places, suggest, and book meetings in. It can also prioritize your calendar. So if you've got an overloaded calendar like my one, it can do things like cancel out or decline meetings where there's no agenda, or decline meetings where it's a lower priority internal. And you can get internal meeting, and you might be able to give it some instructions to understand what a low priority meeting is compared to a high priority one. Maybe it's a one-to-one versus a client meeting, or it's a meeting with people from across different teams. And it can also do things like update spreadsheets and things. So say, for example, you receive messages in from somewhere or feedback in that comes in through different channels. Take that and put that into a spreadsheet for review later. So maybe capturing tasks from meetings and that sort of thing. So very good for those kinds of tasks where you need someone to assist you with it. Now, Trace, who's our project manager here, Trace is across lots of things, and her words to me this morning I cannot repeat on this call, but it was a lot of admiration for having the access to Cowork, because it saves her a truckload of time, or a word that rhymes with truck, load of time, on doing project reporting, because it can pull the spreadsheets, put it into templates, and have it all done very, very quickly for her. So when do we use which tool over the other? I think Copilot when we're thinking about things, when we're writing and analyzing, and Cowork when we've got a complex multi-step task that we want help finishing. Sometimes you can start with Copilot and then move to Cowork, of course, which will save you money because you're already paying for the Copilot license. Just a little summary of the things that Copilot can see. I mentioned this earlier, but Copilot can see the information that's in your tenant that you have permission to see. And what Cowork does is, if it's going to create a new document based on something that is sensitive, it will apply the highest order sensitivity label to the item. So if you've got several documents that references that are just general, but one that's confidential, it will set the label to be confidential. It's also going to be important to make sure that those sort of oversharing things that we've talked about a lot in the past about AI continue to be done, because Cowork is going to just push the envelope a little bit further. It's just going to give you one more level of things that it's going to find that you may not necessarily have visibility of unless you go and check the transcript. And you've also got things like the DLP policy and life cycles to help manage and retain the content that gets created and govern your environment. But the golden rule is that make sure that you've got, your information that you have access to, that if you're using Cowork, make sure that you check it, have a human in the loop. That's really, really important. But also make sure you understand what the boundaries are, where it can see, because you don't want an unfortunate surprise.
I've got a question, Steve.
You got a question? Great.
Yep. Is there a way to get a summary of what credits are used against, and that's in order to easily justify credits used to the finance department or the manager?
Yeah, what I'm going to do, I'm going to jump into the admin portal in a second, and I'll show you what that looks like so you can see it.
Okay. Next question.
Let me just say this. When Microsoft announced that they were going to enable Cowork billing, they announced it like about 10 days before they made it available. So what we did was we went and added a budget into our environment, so that we set the budget to what we thought was like, this is plenty, and we blew it in the second day. So because everyone got excited and started playing with it, and I don't want to curb the enthusiasm, but also I don't want to bankrupt the company at the same time. So it's like finding that balance is quite important, and so I'll show you some tools that can help you with that problem.
Awesome. Are you satisfied the security is high enough that it would fit in with our cybersecurity and insurance requirements?
If you're already using Copilot in your environment, then it's the same access. It's the same access you have as a human. I think the thing that you need to be aware of is that it does have the ability to remove, create content, and so on. So I think there's a user awareness part that needs to go with this. If you've got Microsoft 365 and something gets deleted, then you can restore from the recycle bins and so on. It doesn't go and do a hard delete from anywhere. But as with any AI tool, I think it's on the user to ensure that the content that they generate is reviewed. There was a very embarrassing situation for a well-known consulting company end of last year, where they produced a report that had incorrect references, of made-up references. And last night, I was listening to the news last night. They were talking about at least 3 cases in front of the New Zealand courts where where references in the submitted material were made up and fabricated by AI because they hadn't been checked and validated by a person. So I think if that doesn't scare you enough to say, I need to read this before I send it, I'd ask you, the question would be, if you gave your intern instructions to write a letter, would you read an email or a letter to a client? Would you read it before you sent it, or would you just send it blind? Treat AI the same way. I think you need to make sure you've got that person in the loop. So what I'm going to do now, rather than go, I had some screenshots in here because I wasn't sure if we were going to get into this section. So I've put them in the slide deck, but we'll go actually into the admin center and do this interactively. So now, before we go back into the admin center, I just want to show you that Cowork has completed the task, and then down here it couldn't find the CEO in your Stratos directory. Who are you going to report to? So I'm just going to so it's going to ask me a question. See, so it hasn't been able to complete the task, so it stopped and asked me a question. But I just want to show you the output that it's created. So here's our document, and if you remember a few minutes ago, I showed you the template, and you'll see that what it's done is it's put the tasks into the template from the spreadsheet. It's added the planning milestones in here. It's added an update on the budget for the project. It's created a list of approvals and the next priorities for that, and again, given some commentary at the end. So it's created a really good draft from my spreadsheet for me while I was doing another job, which happened to be presenting a webinar. But you can see the concept. It's done that job for me. So the question I think somebody just asked before was, how much did that cost? I was going to go skip on this one here. So in Copilot Cowork, you can type in /cost, and when I hit cue that up, that cost 456.4 credits. So if you multiply that out, that's $4.56 American, or about $7 something New Zealand, around that sort of cost to do that. So whereas if I had done this manually, I saw the reaction that I was hoping I was going to get. Right. So the thing you need to think about here is this task worth the cost to do with Cowork, or can I just do it manually? Now that cost might be time, and it might be, or it might be I just can't get to this thing, and it's going to add the value. But you don't want to sit here and use it to create trivial things, because there is a cost to it. Now I did ask it to do a reasonably sophisticated job. What I did notice though was that yesterday when I ran the same task, the cost was $3.58 yesterday. So there's variability between asking almost the same question on there. And one thing I haven't done or talked about yet is this little thing at the top up here where it says auto. If I push the down arrow on that, you'll see it's got 3 different models that I can choose from. And what I suspect has probably happened is that yesterday when I ran it, I used the Claude Sonnet, which is more efficient and less expensive to run than Claude Opus. And I suspect that it's used as Opus to run this model this time around, because it's better at high complexity jobs, but it's also more expensive to run. So I suspect that that's what the difference in the pricing is. But a couple of dollars, or about almost 25% difference in cost between the two, asking it to do the same job there. So let's jump over into the admin center, and we'll talk a wee bit about admin. So I'm in my developer tenant. So in my developer tenant, I don't have, I've only got one user, which is myself. But so you won't see a lot of dollar values in here. But what I want to do show you is what you'll see. So the first thing we need to do to enable Cowork in our tenant is we need to firstly enable it, which when we come into the Cowork screen, we get an option to enable. And then once we've done that, we need to go into our cost management bit here. And this is where we can create and configure our policy. So we create what's called a spending policy. And I'm just going to view this one. And when we create the spending policy, what we're doing is we give it a name, we can assign it to a group. Now, the good thing about assigning to groups is that you might want to give the marketing department a different group to finance and a different group to the sales team, because then you can assign different budgets to each group and you can report against that group's consumption. Okay, so that gives you the granularity to be able to see where is this money being spent on the consumption. And you'll see in here, I've just given myself a limit of 1,500 credits a month, just so I don't set fire to my credit card, which was probably why we got the reaction we did before when I showed the cost. So I've purposely set that low so I can understand how it's going to be used. And then you can, I've got alerting turn off. You can turn on alerts and you have it send an email, which will send you notifications when it's getting close to the budget or reaching the budget. As an end user, if it reaches the budget, Copilot will show a message to say that that you've run out of credits and you'll need to wait either for the month rollover or request more from your administrator. So you've got some control there. Under consumption, I'm not going to see a lot here, but you'll see it's got my user in here and it's got my consumption for this user. It hasn't shown that last one I've just done, so it's not an instant update, by the way. So it'll take a little while for that to appear in here, but you can get an idea of where who's using the most and so on. So you can create a bit of a leaderboard. Tracy, our fabulous project manager, is the leader on. Surprised everyone by being our leading consumer of credits, but she's doing a lot of high value work, and she said it's saved her sanity because she's trying to keep on top of a lot, and so it's definitely added value in that way.
Right, I've got a couple of questions. Am I all right to interrupt?
Yeah.
So, do you think that Microsoft will soon adopt a similar pattern of credit usage for actions in regular M365 Copilot, or do you think they'll just stick with the licensing that covers us at the moment?
Yeah, there's been no indication that they will change the model for other uses. The reason that there is a reason why they're doing this particular consumption-based model, which is that when you're using M365 Copilot, you're using Microsoft's hosted models and infrastructure. When you're using the Cowork, Cowork is a collaboration between Microsoft and Anthropic, and so it uses Anthropic's models, and there's a cost to running those on top, and so they've chosen to take that model because it's a profit share with Anthropic. The other thing to note is that if you are in the EU or the UK, the Anthropic models are off by default because of GDPR. And so if you are working with a company that is UK or EU based, they would need to enable that model first because the Anthropic models are US hosted. And so there is a concern of data residency that some organisations will have, and to comply with the EU regulations, it needs to be an opt-in. So that is something that is not really clear currently. But these models are not available in every data centre. So there is although the content remains inside your tenant's boundary, the tenant boundary is stretched into North America for some of these features. So if data residency is a concern, then that's worth make sure that you're not going to upset someone by using something that might break some data residency requirements that you may have in some organisations. That is going to improve. It's just the current architecture is following that sort of model.
Is there a way to see what tasks use the credits from the admin console? Jeremy, that's crazy. 5,000. I have a user who consumed 5,000 credits in 4 days, and I want to help them figure out what tasks consume the most credits and if there were inefficiencies. Yeah. So
I think that level of reporting is yet available. So, but it's a good piece of feedback. I will pass feedback like that back to Microsoft. So I think what we're finding at Stratos when we're using this is exactly that, is like, how much did that task cost? We can see it at the user level by using that /cost option, but we can't see the breakdown of like which prompt was it that caused it to use more, or break down that task, because the task's multi-stage. We can't see down to each stage of that task and say, would it have used less if I hadn't asked it to create an email, for example?
Is Copilot harnessing Claude in this case for data governance and things like that?
No, it's the model that Claude uses. You can get there's also a tool Claude Cowork is Anthropic's own tool. Claude Cowork can also plug in and do these types of some of these types of tasks. The difference is that it doesn't have the graph and work IQ connectors that Microsoft has. So it relies more on you feeding the documents to it. It doesn't have quite the same. It has a different model for doing it. So there's pros and cons to both. But I guess the thing to be aware of is checking where that content ends up. Because one thing I didn't show you was that in Cowork, I'm just going to jump back over into Cowork for a second and just show you in my documents. And so I'm in my OneDrive, and in documents there's a folder called Cowork that's created by Cowork, and in here you'll see sessions, and in sessions you'll see the content that's being created during those sessions. So sorry, if I go into there and go into one of these, you'll see it's got outputs and it's got documents and so on. So it's creating documents in these areas. It's also in here where we would stick skills. I'm going to talk about skills shortly, but the documents that it generates, it sticks in OneDrive. So if you've got an information management requirement, now we've got content being created in OneDrive. So it's not kind of like, doesn't understand so that you might want to file that to your team or a SharePoint site, for example. And Claude is the same. It'll generate it and save it to your OneDrive. It's very similar in the way it works.
Natalie, I think that covered off your question about using the benefit of using Cowork rather than working directly with Claude to do the same task.
Yeah, I think the difference with Claude is like Copilot, so it's like it's interactive with you're interacting with it rather than sending off and giving it an autonomous task to do, unless you're using agents, unless you created an agent to do that. All right. What I wanted to do was just sort of show you a few things that are possible to sort of paint a picture of where the world's heading in terms of AI. And one of the features that we see in AI that's kind of important it's usually developer. It starts in the developer space, but really it's equally applies to what we would have in a business setting as well. So it's the ability to create skills that can help the AI tools to do more and by giving them more context, additional instructions, and and steps to follow to do things. There are lots of different people out there creating resources, and I just wanted to show you a couple. So one that I really like is this one here, which is for those of you that aren't developers, this is a thing called GitHub, but in here is a library of skill files. And you can see in here we've got like there's a skill here for risk, ethics, and compliance. And if I go and look into this one here, they've created a hack that's going to help you to analyze content for risk, ethics, and compliance related controls. And the way it does it is it defines it in this thing called a skills file. And the skills file is essentially a set of instructions. It starts off and says, what are we here for? When I run, what do I do? What information do I need to answer this question, and where do I find it? What are the steps in the process that I should do? And then what should I create? And if I can't figure it out, what should I do? And then it's got this thing down here called safety rules. Now, safety rules is the bit where you might go and say, well, we have things in here we want for our own company. So for example, if I was creating a skill that was going to be running in an HR setting, you might want to have that skill explicitly add a safety rule to say never include salaries in the output document, so that and never include names, addresses, and phone numbers, for example, for privacy reasons. So when you're creating a document or you're querying that content, it knows not to do that. It's been told explicitly, do not do this thing. And then you can also have quality checks down here as well. So you've got these things sort of build out this skills document, and you'll see it's in plain English. So you can create these files yourself from scratch, or you can use AI to actually generate a skills file by telling the AI what you want and then drafting it, and then you fill in the gaps as well. Once we've got a skills file, in GitHub, we just use this little thing here to download the file, but we upload that into OneDrive, into the skills folder. And I've got a couple of skills in here. I've got one that's a meeting one-pager, and that skill will let me look at a meeting and generate a one-page summary of a meeting. And I've got another one, which is transcript to actions, which will take a Teams meeting transcript and pull out the actions from that Teams meeting transcript. Now, if I've got the skills added into my Cowork skills, I can then instruct Cowork to use the skills file to answer the question. So I can not only take my base Copilot Cowork, which is the equivalent of someone that's your assistant's arrived at work and it's their first day, and then I can give them the knowledge of how to do, of the processes and procedures that we have, that's the skills, so that it can know more and do better. And I can develop the skills, and I can specifically say to it, for when a Teams meeting ends, or take that Teams meeting transcript, pull it using the transcript to actions skill, generate a task list for me, and it'll use that skill and the instructions I've put in there to do that for me, which is a very powerful. So there's this one here. I'm in the slide deck. I've actually got the links to all of these things. There's lots of different skills in here for everything from like daily briefings and building some basic dashboards and tidying up my inbox. Then we've got this one here. So this one here is the Microsoft Cowork Collective Agent Academy, and this is a training courses, a free training course on how to use some of the Cowork tools. You can go through and it'll teach you a little bit about how to use it and give you some insights and tasks to do now, the thing is, of course, when you're doing this stuff, if you're using Cowork, remember the in the background, somebody's chipping away at your credit card, so just be very careful on that one. The third one is this website here called skills.sh. This site here has large numbers of skills in here around all sorts of tools. So you can find one. And a really good example I saw was someone said, I want to take an Excel spreadsheet and I want to create a web page dashboard from the spreadsheet. And when they created it, it looked good, but not great. So what they did was they took the front-end design skill and added that to Cowork, and then ran it again, and it used all of the nice design methodology to create a nice looking modern dashboard page at HTML, which they could then send around to the people that needed to see it. And that's using an advanced skill capability. And there's lots in here, and you'll see some of these have been downloaded hundreds of thousands of times, so they're very popular. And this is not specific to any type of AI as well. These work across different AI tools, so it's a kind of a standard. So really good place to get some extra tools and capability if you're looking for them.
Quick question about skills.
Yeah.
If you have a longer or larger skills document, will it cause each Cowork prompt to use more tokens?
Yes. Yeah, that will be a that will definitely be a part of the contribution to those costs. So this is something that needs planning out and thinking about a lot rather than just like jumping in and just trying to figure it out. I think you need to sit down and plan before you and understand what the outcome is you want before you start doing it. And I'd suggest what you can do is actually do most of those steps manually in Copilot, so you're not incurring that running cost. Work through those steps to figure out what it is you want, and then that helps you create the question that you might want to ask Cowork later. I'm just going to skip through things here. Also, a couple of things we can do here is we can, so this one here, so the default is, I just want to show the default on the on Cowork is do not limit monthly spending. That's the default. So you don't want that to be the default, right? We want that to not be the default. So make sure you fix that. That is in the admin portal under Copilot and cost management. When you create the policy in there, you'll see, do not limit monthly spending. That's frankly terrible. Next thing you want to do is make sure that you've got the consumption tracking enabled. So that's creating those groups By default, you can create a group called applies to all users. If you do that and then anyone in your organization can turn Cowork on. If you assign this to a named group of people, like a security group, then only the people in that security group can access Cowork. I think I know which one I would want. So that's the key things I wanted to get through today. So I've given you a bit of a rundown of when to use which AI tool and when. I'm showing you a little bit about how Cowork works. I've scared you with the pricing and the costs. Talked about some of the ways you can extend it with with skills and just a little bit around the admin portal and the types of things that you might want to see there. So have we got any questions or anything that people would like to see?
Just double checking through the questions to make sure we got everything. Will Stratos turn off the unlimited setting when they install for us?
Yes, I think so. Yes.
Yeah.
So just to be clear, by default, by default the policy is there is no policy at all. So it's not until you turn it on that you get that setting where it defaults to everyone. So the important thing is to make sure it's not set to everyone, but when you're doing that initial setup, so yes. It's a very small thing to do, but you can see from the costs it can save you a lot of money very quickly. We have some really enthusiastic people in our team who love this stuff, and I was sitting at my desk overhearing a conversation about how you could pull all of the different notifications that were coming in and then create a prioritized list and do all of these things, and it was running on a scheduled task every day. And the very first thing I thought of was, how much is it costing to run this process, and what value is it adding in it? And so we had a really quick conversation about that. So I think awareness is probably the number one thing. Make sure people understand the cost that of using Cowork so that they can make an informed decision. I think it's important.
Awesome. We're getting lots of thank yous in the chat. So thanks to you guys for attending, because we like sharing this with you. And obviously, if you have any more questions or you want to have a chat with Steve, just reach out. We're happy to help. And yeah, I will send out this recording and Steve's slides after.
Yeah, great. Well, thanks very much for attending, everyone. It's great to have like a decent crowd on the call today. So I hope you all got something out of this. And if nothing else, I hope that you don't, you manage to look after your credit card by not just turning on and then getting a nasty surprise. So yeah, if there's any questions following on from this, please reach out to Mel and she'll try and answer them or track me down so I can answer them for her. Yeah, I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, guys.
Mel, do you want to introduce the webinar?
Sure, I can do that.